so I have no idea what the spark is going to be in this time that we have together. Like, no, the spark that we come up with today could have something that's transformative for tomorrow or the next 5 years.
This is the Impossible Podcast, an exploration of stories that broke convention, set new standards, smashed glass ceilings, and redefined the notion of what's possible. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Impossible. I am Megan Rokosh, Global Chief Marketing Officer of Havas, and I am your co-host for today, along with my lovely bestie in business and in life, Ashley Miles.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Miles, founder and CEO of Franklyn West, a business growth collective committed to transformation and sustainable growth for businesses and leaders. Also, president of New York Women in Communications, mother to 2 young girls, Mila and Holland. Excited to be here today with my amazing co-host, Megan Rokosh.
So Ashley and I have a deep passion in life of bringing stories forward that we feel will make impact in the world. And that's the foundation for Impossible. So we welcome you to our first episode. And the purpose of this podcast is to give you a seat at the table with some of the best, most impactful people that we know to help uncover and learn from the incredible stories of those who have made the impossible possible.
So everyone from professional athletes to global pop artists to movers and shakers in the business community, we are here to bring you access to our amazing community of trailblazers so that we hear their stories and learn from them and really hear around how they made the impossible possible, especially in this post-2020 world that we now exist in.
So there's so much content out there that's, about amazing stories and biographies, but this podcast we're hoping is a little bit different. We want to give you the real, raw insights on how you yourself can make what you might think is impossible possible in your own life. And we have an absolutely incredible guest who's joining us today. I'm just elated to have one of my most favorite people on this planet join us, Mohamed Massaquoi. Honestly, Mohamed, when I looked through this list that we made of all of your accomplishments, it's like I could get tongue-tied reading off everything that you've done. So we are so excited to have you join us today. We're going to dive in a little bit into your story, but mostly we just want to give and offer your incredible insight to the world. So I'll just give some of the folks listening just a touch of your background, and you can add more detail as well. So you were born in Charlotte, North Carolina, immigrant parents. I'm so excited to hear a little bit more about your family because they produce such an amazing human being. You've had this incredible glowing football career, including 5 successful years in the NFL with the Browns, the Jets, and the Jaguars. And you've pivoted since to business, and you're running this incredible company called the Vessol, which helps folks use human change as this catalyst for success in business. So is there anything that you'd like to add to that? We'd love to hear from your point of view. Tell us just a touch about yourself, where you're at, how you're feeling.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Just think so highly of you and just the spirit. And Ashley, knowing Megan, I know that she sends glowing reviews, so I'm excited to get to know you as well. But I mean, it's just a pleasure. I think that, we are just so, I don't know how to describe it. Like, just the fact that we're alive, I think people take that for granted. And when you have a near-death accident, you're just more intentional about life and you're more present. And so the time here spent today of just being fully engaged, because you can't really control everything on the outside, but just being intentional and trying to make the most of each and every moment is, how I try to live life now and spend this time, and just excited to see where we take this conversation.
And speaking of being intentional, I'm actually reading a lot of really great books right now on focusing on the present, which is nearly impossible, right? So knowing that you live such an intentional life, especially after your accident, which we'll dig into, how do you do that? Like, what are your strategies? Because our natural mind and ego takes us into ruminating over the past or obsessing over the future, which creates anxiety. But the best state to be in, as we know and read about, is intentional in the present. So it would be amazing to hear from you and learn from you on being present?
I think you just miss things. Like if I'm thinking about everything that took place today and all the Zoom calls and things that went right or wrong, like I'm going to miss something happening here. I'm going to be scatterbrained. And then if I start thinking about what's about to happen, I'm not going to be able to take full advantage here. And so I have no idea what the spark is going to be in this time that we have together. Like, no, the spark that we come up with today could have something that's transformative for tomorrow or the next 5 years. And so when you're not intentional, you miss these reference points. And so for me, life is all about reference points. If you're going to go do something great, it's something else that sparked that. But if you miss the thing that could potentially spark it, you can't connect all the links. And so for me, like if I'm with my daughter or if I'm with my family, I put my phone over there somewhere else. My daughter may say a word for the first time, or she may do something, or she may be looking at me, and I can't be thinking about this email. And then if I'm on an email, I can't be like half dad, half email, because I'll send typos or I'll send it to the wrong person. And I've done that before. And so just like really being in the moment and giving whatever you're doing the proper time, the proper weight. And so when you transition your full self to it.
We haven't really addressed your accident. Honestly, I'll have a hard time even talking about it because I love you, and the idea of you ever being in pain just pains me. I hope that you're okay for us to just chat about it. But basically, Mohamed was at the height of his career, what so many people dream of, at the height of the NFL, and lost his hand in an HEV accident. And, I think there's so many people who go through traumatic experiences like that and have a really difficult time coming out the other side. And you have come through with such beauty and grace and humility. You're like an angelic person to be around. So,
oh, thank you.
You are. I mean, that's just the truth. You are a textbook in that. So I'm just wondering if you can take us inside that moment for you, and then your healing journey after that, and like, how do you come through something like that and become this amazing picture of grace and optimism that you are today?
Yeah, so what's interesting is that I'll set the context like this: like adversity is just a part of life, unfortunately. And there's people that have been through things that they think are less than my experience, and there's people that have been through things that I think are more than my experience. And everybody's trauma is their trauma. Like if you stub your toe and it's traumatic to you, it's traumatic to you. And so I tell everybody, like, do not marginalize the trauma that you're going through, because then you can't heal if you're comparing it to someone else. And what's actually interesting is that I retired from the NFL, not because of my hand, but because of concussions. And so I came out the gate, great first year. And then the second year I kept getting concussions. And so I had to retire, which is why I went to Morgan Stanley. And then so I'm at Morgan Stanley, and there's this tension of why am I here? And I go out really just to joyride, something that I've been doing, my whole life with friends. We live in the South, so we have a lot of land. There's four-wheelers out here. And so in four-wheeling one day, I end up losing my hand. And when the accident happened, I didn't think that it was going to become an amputation, because you're like, oh man, I just broke my hand. This is going to suck. I got to go get a cast. My wife is going to say, stay off of those devices. I'll be back on in like a month or whatever, whenever I get this cast off. And so you go into the hospital and you have a doctor look you square in the eye and they say, hey, Mr. Massaquoi, we're going to have to amputate your hand. And you're like, whoa, this isn't supposed to happen. And so we're like, hey, let's just do everything that we can to save it. And so I ended up having 10 plus surgeries over the course of a month and a half. And so you never really get a chance to heal through this process, because you're just in and out, you're in and out, you're in and out, you're in and out. And a lot of traumas like that, where you're just in it, out of it, in it, out of it, in it, out of it. And so people never get a chance to heal. And then there comes a time where you actually get a chance to where you stop having surgery, or the trauma is actually affecting you, but there's a residual effect. And so for me, that's when the mental, stuff started to happen, where it's the deep depression, or you're sitting there and you get a panic attack, or night sweats and terrors. And these are emotions that people suffer through, even if they haven't had an amputation. And that's why I think people shouldn't limit their trauma. And so that was the time where I really started to understand, hey, man, I've lost, 20 pounds through this process. I'm not a huge individual. So, that's a lot of my body weight. Then you get a chance to say, man, I am off. I'm not myself right now. I don't know how, and I don't even know how to get to myself. Hell, I don't even know who I am right now. Who am I going to be right now? And so when you can't get that type of clarity, you're just kind of lost. You're in a fog, and you can pretend, you can smile, you can kind of have moments of where you flash, things that you're all right. But then a lot of times you're just kind of hiding it because you don't want to reveal that vulnerability. You don't want to reveal that part of yourself. And it's not until you really just stop and you go attack that thing head on to start to heal that you can move forward. And specifically as it relates to my hand, you have to think refugee parents, very humble beginnings, the significance of a hand that can really change the trajectory of your family's life, going to college and playing sports at an elite level and getting resources. And so it's a very much a part of my life and my life story. And to have that part of me gone is very traumatic. But here's the thing that you start to learn. People aren't one dimensional. It's not like you were just predisposed to be a professional athlete. You're just predisposed, to be in business. You're just predisposed to doing marketing or PR or, food or whatever the case may be. And so that's when you start to lean into more parts of yourself and say, who am I? And that's why your backstory gives you more of a reference point as to it starts to fill in some of the blanks of who you are. And when you know who you are, then it's like, okay, I can draw from this part of myself. I can draw from that part of myself. I can draw from this part of myself. And I feel more comfortable going because now I know at the other side, I have other aspects of me that can function at a high level as well. And that's a process. It's not a week. It's not it could take, the transition could take, years. But you're making progress all along. And I'm still a work in progress, honestly, because I've continuously developed parts of myself. I continue to learn different things where I'm more confident and I can charge for it more. And so it's ever evolving, honestly.
Did you always have that quality, Mohamed? We're going to talk a little bit about your full story, but talk to us about you as a child. What were you like, and where did you get this incredible ambition and drive that you have?
So it's interesting. What's fascinating is that, so I have a lot of pride of being first generation, born in America, but I have a lot of pride of being Liberian. And so I tell people that each person, each culture, each individual has a form of themselves that functions at the highest capacity. And so you have to know who you are, where you come from to understand that. And so knowing that, there's certain individuals from the tribes that I come from, they were predisposed to do certain things. My grandma's an entrepreneur, my dad's entrepreneur, my great grandparents were entrepreneur. And so they went for it. And so that's in me. And if I don't know that part of myself, I'm going to deviate from that. And every time you deviate from a part of yourself, you're living with this tension. And so you either course correct or you live in this tension. And people don't want to live in the tension because they know that they're out of place. They know that they're out of line. And I've been there before. And so the more that I come back to who I actually am, I find joy. And that doesn't mean that you're going to have this easy walk. But even when things are challenging, you like working through them because you have already been born with the skill sets. And so I lean into my whole self. I ask more questions about who I am. I try to ask my mom. I try to ask my dad. I try to ask my family, my grandparents, who are we? Who are we as individuals? How am I supposed to be moving through life so that North Star that I'm actually pointing to is the right one?
And how do you actually marry your heritage and all those things about your past with your own perspective and ideas of who you want to be in the present and in the future? Right? Because I think there's a healthy sort of balance and rhythm. So how do you see that?
Well, it's broad. It's not my dad did X, so I need to go do that X. It's almost like the thought behind how they attacked a certain problem or how they moved forward in life. And so, my dad's charismatic. My dad's a people person. My mom functions a certain way. My you can kind of see these behavioral traits that are just you're genetically predisposed to have. And so I think some people are so influenced by things that they think that they should be, that they see on TV, that they see in the world, and they're unhappy being those things. But if you know, like, I can be very comfortable in my Nike jacket and like, this is the thing I'm most comfortable in. I don't want to go be in like some other thing for the sake of whatever. Like, I move through as my natural self. And so the more people can just feel comfortable being their natural self based off like what their body's already telling them, not in an arrogant way, not in an egregious way, but just being comfortable in your own skin, you just move with so much more freedom. And when you're free to do, you can create and you can be, and you're more authentic, and you build memories that are more aligned to what you want them to be versus just,
traveling on your own path versus listening to all the outside voices telling you who you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to be doing or wearing, etc.
Yeah. I tell people, like, if I give someone advice, before I give them advice, I say, filter this through where you're actually trying to go, because I could say something that takes you away from where you're actually trying to go. So sometimes advice tells you where you shouldn't be. Somebody may tell you go do something that should actually be the wrong thing. And so if you don't know where you're actually trying to go, you're going to listen to this and you're going to go down the wrong path. Or there just may be like a subtle nugget that they say that's just a piece of what you need. But if you don't know where you're trying to go, like all the stimulus, like you're just going to be all over the place. And so for me, like, I know where I'm trying to go. And that's why it's so important to be intentional, because you're taking these little nuggets from life that you gather, and it helps you get to where you're ultimately trying to get to versus just continuously changing course and being clueless, blowing with the wind.
Already you've hit the nail on the head in terms of the purpose of this podcast is helping people figure out how to make what's impossible possible in their own lives. And I think so many people would look at someone like you who has this long list of amazing credentials and many others and think that you are always looking forward. So, I mean, what an incredible gift for you to give us to talk about looking at your past. And I'm just wondering if you can even talk to us a little bit more about that. What was that exercise like for you? What did you do? And what do you feel like are the biggest gifts that you've been given from your past that have led to such an amazing and fruitful existence for you today?
So here's what's interesting. Like, I learned something. So when my parents came over, they basically came over as refugees. And so when they came to America, they were just trying to figure this thing out. And so when they had me, I actually got sent to Liberia for the first 3 years of life. And so my childhood is very scattered. We moved around a lot. And so my past allowed me to adapt to different situations because just naturally we were in different environments. And so now I feel very comfortable wherever I am. And I was around a lot of different people. And so that idea of just like psychology and understanding people was fascinating to me. And so naturally, when I got to college, that was the thing that I wanted to study, even though many athletes didn't do it. And so you fast forward, I go through sports, I leave sports, and then I'm like, oh, what should I do? And the advice tells you, oh, go get like a real job. And so I go to the finance world and I hate it. But even though it's like a real job, you get a chance to wear a suit and tie and it's fancy, you like are deemed successful or whatever. It wasn't me. And so then you go back to your past because you have to course correct and you figure out, oh, I actually like this world of psychology. And so now I'm actually getting my master's in industrial organizational psychology to be an organizational psychologist to enhance the work. And so your past kind of tells you where you need to go. And then you have to like kind of identify where you're going to the future so that you know what you're working towards, but there's flexibility in there because as you hear something, it's like, okay, this is how I want this thing to manifest because it's big, it's broad, it's complicated. And it's almost like checkpoints. As you get to another checkpoint, you get more information that you can act on as you get to another checkpoint. And then over time, you've made progress and people are like, how'd you get there? You're like, I don't really know, but it's just like these small little things that you're picking up along the way versus saying, I'm going to grow up and be X, Y, Z. Maybe not, because you don't know what you're going to come in contact with that either changes that or enhances it or tells you that you're interested in something completely different.
So speaking of manifesting, you're clearly a visionary. If you look at your background, if you look at your new company and everything that you're building, you're visionary. So talk to us about how you go about creating your bold vision, but then not just thinking about it, but taking action on it.
Yeah. I had a guy reach out to me one time, and it's something that I will remember for the rest of my life. Like somebody actually told him, hey, this is your guy. You have this problem. This is the guy that's going to help you solve it. And so we go out to lunch and we're talking, the conversation's going really well. And at the end of it, he asked me a question. He says, "Are you qualified?" I was like, "What? Like, am I qualified? Like, what kind of question is that? Like, somebody referred me to you. Like, do I want to take this project? Is more of what I should be thinking about right now." And I really sat and I thought about it, and I was like, "Wow, I'm qualified to do this, 7 days out of the week, but I may not be qualified to do everything that I need to do." And so you realize that you have to go enhance your skill set if you want to go do something. Just because you're like dreaming about it, just because you're thinking about it, doesn't actually mean that you've developed the necessary skills or the experience or just whatever you may need on this journey. And so I'm of the mindset that you have to continuously improve yourself. You have to continuously develop. You have to continuously understand what you're doing. And then it's the next best thing that you can do to do that. It'd be unrealistic to say, okay, tomorrow I want to go do X, Y, Z if I haven't done like the small steps. And so what is the next best thing that you can do? Is it going to get proper education? Is it going to intern somewhere? Is it going to get an apprenticeship? Is it working somewhere for a few years so that once you get to when you actually have to answer that question, are you qualified? You've done all the pre-work, but you know what you need to do. And a lot of people, I don't think that they pay attention, like, once again, being present. Like, people are showing you what they're doing, whether it's, if you listen to a podcast, there may be one thing that you can take and repurpose it for your life. Or there may be one struggle where you're like, man, so-and-so went through 5 years of hardship. They were grinding. So mentally, that tells me to get to the other side of this, it may be a 5-year grind, but I know what's on the other side of it. It's not in vain. And that scares people. And so if it scares you, that lets you know that maybe you need to course correct and do something else that's within your comfort zone. But if you're going for it, there's really no like easy way to get there. You're going to have to go through the challenges. You're going to have to go through the grind. But you have a reference point of other people going through the challenges, going through the grind. And so you become more comfortable going through the challenges, going through the grind.
So I want to ask you a little bit about like doubt. I think that person who asked you that question, all of us have faced that, especially when we have big, ambitious, what people might think of are impossible or crazy ideas. How did you overcome that? Because you're like a 4-time Impossible Award winner. You've done so much in your life already that so many people, I think, would look at and be like, oh, can you do that? Just to be the child of immigrant parents and to, go on to play in the NFL the way that you did, and then subsequently have this amazing career. Your accident is an incredible story as well. How do you deal with that? Because you talk about this intuition that guides you, but when someone or something inserts itself into your story and asks you a question like that, what is your process?
What's interesting is that if there's a doubt, then I actually take a step back and I'm like, okay, why is there doubt? Like, is there doubt because this person sees something that I need to correct? Or is there doubt because this person has doubt and it's their doubt and it's not my doubt? And, sometimes people will project their own doubt and insecurities and fears on you because of where they're comfortable going. And so you have to separate those things. And for me, I'm like I'm an optimist. And so there's like nothing that I don't believe that is possible until I get in it and I figure out I got to course correct. But going into something, I'm running through the wall. And then if I run into the wall and it doesn't come down, then I'll back up and say, okay, maybe I need to go around it. Or maybe, I need to do something else. But to start out, I'm running through the wall. And it's just this belief that we can make it happen. And you start to realize people are normal people. You get a chance to see like really amazing people that have done incredible things. But once you take a step back, they're really normal people. And so in being able to see those different individuals and they're just normal people, you start to realize that they've done the work. They are in the areas that they're gifted, which is another part. If I told you, hey, I want to be a Grammy Award singer, and you've heard me sing before, you would be right to have doubt because that's not my area of giftedness. And so being completely honest with yourself about like where it is that your strengths actually lie is just having that self-awareness. And that's the other part. I'm self-aware to know, okay, these are areas that I probably shouldn't play in. But the areas that I think that I'm passionate about, that I can develop in, that I know I'm willing to grind through, I'm running through the wall every time.
So are you telling me you don't have an inner self-critic in a negative way. You're saying you view feedback or judgment as data or practical. Let's assess why I'm getting this feedback or why I'm concerned. But you're saying your ego and mind don't necessarily take over your emotions like they do a lot of people.
So if I ask, let's say if I send you something like, hey, I'm writing a paper, I need you to look at this. I want you to blast holes through it, because when I put it out there, I want it to be stress test. And so when someone has some type of doubt, in my mind, they're stress testing something that I need to go correct. And I try not to do anything without having a stress test prior to doing it, because you don't want to get an opportunity to perform at the highest level. And that's the first time that you've done something.
Right.
Like that's the first shot that you.
What about like as a game changer, right? You're out there, you're making big things happen, whether it's in sports or career. We all have folks who judge us, or we have doubters that might come at us in a real negative way. And how do you hear those voices? Does that get through to you, or how do you assess judgmental behavior that you might agree or not agree with?
So this is me speaking, like there's like two versions. There's post-accident and there's pre-accident. Pre-accident, something that I didn't do enough of was just the mental health aspect of things, where you have a chance to like voice some of these fears, these concerns, these challenges that you face. And if I'm honest with you, there were some things, once my accident happened, I actually started to go get mental help, mental counseling, mental therapy, just because it was so traumatic that I didn't know how to get through it. And we spent a lot of time actually addressing things that had happened prior to the accident. And so I think people are waiting on these big events to happen before they go get the right mental health, the right mental counseling, because they think there's a stigma attached to them. But what they're doing is they're shortchanging themselves, because you're almost functioning with a glitch. You're functioning with this doubt. You're functioning with this lack of confidence. You're questioning yourself in ways that you shouldn't. And so now, post-accident and constantly seeing a therapist and constantly talking through issues and constantly just being honest, when these things happen, they've already been addressed. And so it doesn't really affect me, because I'm a lot more comfortable in myself. I'm a lot more comfortable in where I'm going. I have a lot more clarity in life. And so if you don't have that, you can get swayed really easy. Like we're fickle, we're human, we have emotions. And that's not to say that things still don't bother me, but I have a place to go dump that stuff now, versus me trying to internally process. I can go give it to somebody that's more equipped to help me navigate through it, in the same way that a person would go to a personal trainer that, if they were trying to get their body in order. You're trusting the expert to say, hey, I'm flawed. I have this junk. I'm off right now, however you want to title it. Help me work through this. And then you get your troubleshoot, you get your oil change, and then you go back out into the world. And then you're not fixed. And so you have to continue to go get your oil change, continue to go troubleshoot. And so you can go back out into the world and function.
Wow.
I mean, what a gift for you to give anybody who's been through trauma. And I think 2020 as a case study, and, even ongoing just in life for many people, it's amazing actually to hear how many really successful people have been through traumatic experiences. And I think for anyone who's listening to this today, if you have been, there is so much power to be found in that. So I just appreciate you expressing that.
Thank you.
So another big reason for us doing this podcast is, how are we making the impossible possible in big ways, but also small daily actions that help our audience develop themselves and grow both mentally and physically and spiritually. So are there any tips, because you are so incredibly resilient, are there any tips that you would give our audience and us to really living your best life, mentally, physically, spiritually? But like, what are those small things that you do? Is it gratitude? Is it sleep? Like, what's your secret sauce for this amazing life rhythm that you've created for yourself?
It's learned over time. It's it's weird because even in the 10 plus surgeries, my surgeon was comfortable doing that because of the shape that I came in with. And so that was based off of like the condition my body was in prior to that event ever happening. And so for me, a lot of how I'm wired is based off of just the things that I've naturally done over life. And so there may be some things that are a perfect fit to me that aren't for other people. And so working out is big for me because it ties me back into my athletic roots. Being in places, I hate COVID from the extent that we're, all in like enclosed in our houses because you don't get a chance to see people. And I like that. So I literally like will drive around the city just to see people and stimulate myself or whatever. To recharge. There's certain nights where I have hard deadlines of where I'm going to go to sleep at 9:30 at the latest, just so I can get a good night's sleep. And eating food, I'll eat junk every once in a while, but I try to eat, as clean as possible. And that comes from, I had so much just like drugs and junk in my body, from being in and out of surgery, that I never wanted my body to feel like that again. And so it's based off of your life experience, what you're comfortable with, and you set your own rhythm.
Any good books you're reading?
God dog, A Man's Search for Meaning is good. I'm trying to think. The Inner Game of Tennis is good. What's Ben Horowitz's latest book? I can't remember what his latest book is, but his book was good. And so I try to read physical copies of books because that way it allows me to like truly be fully engaged. And then the rest of the reading is for school, which isn't as exciting.
I want to ask you too about, people embracing their unique qualities about themselves, because I can't imagine for you, like you said, so much of your life and your career was based on the use of your hands. And then when you lost your hand, kind of, moving forward through that, when I first met you, I thought your hand was the most dope, badass, amazing. It still is. You should be so proud of it. It's such a cool, unique thing about you. And what was that process like for you?
This hand right here that maneuvers and gestures, it is, I remember looking, I remember like finally finding out that I was going to be an amputee and need a prosthetic hand. And the only thing that I could think of was the guy in Happy Gilmore that had like the wooden hand. And I was like, oh my God, like that's not going to work. And so we went on this deep search to figure out like what was the most aesthetically pleasing, unique, almost like Iron Man, Tony Starkish type hand, because your story's your story. Like there's no way that I can go back and regain my hand. And so you own the outcome of whatever happened to you. You give it new meaning, you give it new voice. And so in looking for a hand, I was like, if I'm going to get a hand, it's going to be a badass hand. Like it's not just going to be a janky hand. And it's fascinating because I'll be in the grocery store or in Target and you'll see a kid that's just tapping on their parent. And they're like, look at the hand, look at the hand. And, I'll move it around a little bit for her. And there's been kids come up and be like, hey, where can I get one of those hands? I'm like, trust me, you don't like, just keep what you have. And so the taking pride in wherever you are, whatever your options are, like completely own it. Don't like you define yourself. And so when you define yourself, you can own it. But if you're not happy with what you have, or you're not happy with the story that's been told, it's your job to take that and articulate it in a way that you're proud of, whatever it is. Like whatever your situation is, you should own it and have pride in it. And as you can enhance it, as you can change it, then you definitely change it.
I love it. Maximizing the experience, maximizing the gifts that you're given and the challenges that you're given to be the best version of you and the most authentic version of you. So I'd love to talk about the role of sports in your life, because from early childhood to being undefeated all through high school, I believe, to professional sports, to now your athleticism really playing a role in your personal day-to-day self-care. So what is the role of sports been in your life, and how has it evolved over the years? Maybe you have a different relationship with sports and working out than you did when you were a child. So I would love to hear from you on that.
So I don't get a chance to work out as much as I want to. I have a 20-month-old, and so sometimes, getting out of the house is daddy duties come first. That takes priority. But I look at life as sport. Like everything is competition, and sometimes you're competing externally, sometimes you're competing internally. Hopefully both. Hopefully the extrinsic competition doesn't overweigh the intrinsic competition, because you start to get off track. But everything is the internal competition of like, how can I be my best in this situation? And whether that is when I'm working out and I'll still want to go push weights around, I have another device that's made for that. I got a tennis hand that's made so that I can go and run around there. And just as sport naturally pushes you out of your comfort zone, because when you leave, you're tired, you're sore. But it's this euphoric experience where you've done something and you've competed and you've given effort and you've tried hard. And it brings joy. Funny story, we were in a children's hospital. It's me, Thomas Davis, Steve Smith, and we're playing like charades. It's like a card game, and there's nothing on the line. And we're basically microphoned up to the kids' rooms. Like, these kids are going through the situations, unfortunately. And we're sitting there yelling into the microphones that are feeding up into these kids' rooms to win. There was like no prize on the line. And the parents, when we finally made our way around to the rooms, they thought we were crazy and they were just laughing at us. And it was just like this internal drive to compete, and not compete in a way that is disrespectful to the game or that's cheating or anything, but just this love to compete. And then you high five, you go and you have life again, and then you go compete again. And it just continues to push you to be your best.
And what fuels you, Mohamed, on a day-to-day? So obviously, I mean, you have this beautiful family, you have this new, young, gorgeous baby. And I don't know if this is like too deep to ask you, but I would really love to know, are you a spiritual person? What are the things that you take energy from?
Yeah, so that's actually interesting. So I have I'm not even sure if you can see it. I'll send you a picture of it. But I have a tattoo. I have two tattoos on my left wrist. There's a cross right here, and through here spells fear. And so I got these tattoos back in like one, let's say 2010, the other one in 2014, well before my accident happened. And I have a skin graft this thing's a skin graft right here. And so they flip the skin over. And so where the incision is probably about that far from the cross. And the other incision goes through the other tattoo, which spells fear. And fear stands for faith eliminate all restraints. And so literally where it divides in half is the F, but the faith part of fear stands alone. So you understand that your faith is always going to be solid. It's always going to be able to stand on itself. And then the eliminate all restraints follows it. And so I don't think that that's by chance. And I don't think where we end up is by chance. I think God has a way of course correcting us, when he needs to get us somewhere, or just through life in general. We figure it out all at different times. And so I don't know if everything happens for a reason, but how we come out of it, we can define it and get to where we need to get to. And so the strength comes from just experiencing life. I love living life. I love, as I learn, wanting to do more. And so I think Matthew McConaughey said, like, he's chasing the person 10 years from now.
Right.
And I think there's power to that, because I'm like, wow, I don't even feel like I've scratched the surface. I feel like there's so much more to learn. There's so much more to do. There's so much more to experience. And as you do that, naturally, you get exposed to different things, and then you just restart all over again.
You're going to laugh. I have your same tattoo on my hand.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, I never did that. Yeah.
It's a secret. It's a secret for me. And it's sort of the same premise. I got it just as a reminder of faith. I had a year where I felt like everything sort of lined up in a way that was much bigger than me. And I don't have a very, strict definition of what that looks like, and support everybody's version of what that is. But that's why I got it. So that in those times you're kind of looking around going, wait a minute, what? That you have a reference.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's crazy. It's like these little subtle nuggets that just drop in your spirit, and you're just like, okay, like I would have designed it differently, God. I would like to have my hand right now, but I guess I'll trust you on this one.
What I love about this conversation and why you've been our first guest is because we know you're not scared of being raw and being open and vulnerable. And I really, as my final question to you, would love to understand racism around, because there's so many incredible people around the world and in our country who face racism every day still.
It's interesting because I get these two different experiences. Like, some people know me as a professional athlete. Some people know me that I played college. I live in Atlanta. And so this is a big sports town, Georgia town. And so you get preferential treatment per se, as this, figure that they can identify with, this safe figure. But I don't walk around in a helmet. I don't walk around in a jersey. And so you get normal treatment of how everyone else is experiencing it. And it doesn't matter where you live. We live in a decent area. And so if a cop drives through this area, they're going to slow down a little bit more and look at you. And you're like, I'm walking home, bro. Like, what's the problem? And I see it sometimes in the same individual where you walk in somewhere and someone's like, hey, where do I put my coat? Or, why are you here? And then they realize that you're there for a reason, or you're there with the person that they want to be there with. And then you can see their attitude change. And so it's very real. It appears in many forms. Sometimes it's just outright egregious. Sometimes it's unconscious bias that people have been trained and taught. And I think it's people haven't found enough common ground to actually build off the things that they have in common. Some people, honestly, they're racist because they fear something. They have been given certain things, realize that there's parity they'll no longer have access to, which is a problem of their own, not the rest of society shouldn't have to pay for. And so one thing that has happened, it hasn't happened in a way that is as peaceful as it should. But the thing that you can't argue with is that America has put it on full display, the challenges that are still existent. And so we can no longer say we don't know, or and that's for all individuals, Black, Latino, Indian, women, LGBT, like every individual that's walking should have an opportunity to just be comfortable in their skin and not deal with the shit that society throws at them. And so it is something that I hope improves as people see what's actually going on, that they actually stop, even if it's something that they don't identify with themselves, to understand that people that are trying to live normal, high functioning lives should not have any barriers that they have to cross, whether, once again, if it's egregious or it shows up in resources that go to education, financial access, like job access, payment access, that just the whole thing needs to be cleaned up, honestly.
We appreciate you sharing that. You're so candid about it. And we want anybody who is watching this or listening to this to know that no matter what your story is, or your background, or your sexual orientation, or otherwise, you are welcome here. Your voice matters. We care about you. And, we are here to share inclusive stories from across the board. So that's what this community is all about. So we thank you for sharing that. We spend this time with great, amazing folks like you, trying to help people learn how to make what's impossible possible. And listen, I think you could drop the mic now, because you have just given us so much insight. I mean, my goodness, on risk versus danger, on the importance of faith and how you, carry that through in your life, on looking back to move forward, and how you reference your past to build your future. I mean, there's just so much to be taken from your amazing, brilliant mind. And we can sit here for hours, but we finish every episode with the same question.
Okay.
And that question is, what is possible?
Oh, that's a good question. The simple questions are always like the best. I think what is possible, anything that you're uniquely qualified to do based off of the work that you put in and the gifts that this guy's given you. And so that is very broad, but we see random everyday people going out to do these things. We see a person that is, 5'9" in the NBA where they're running around with these 7-foot giants. You see someone that is, African American that becomes the president. You see somebody that's a female that's running a, Fortune 500 company. You see a mother that is beautifully raising, triplets by themselves with no other resource. You see a dad that has stayed home so that the wife can go out and change the world. You see kids that are fighting climate change. And so you're not limited. It's just are you passionate about that thing? Are you going to put the time and effort in that thing? And do you have a skill set that allows you to have success in that thing? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're, who made the song? I think Michael Jackson. Doesn't matter if you're black or white. It literally doesn't matter. We all have such different talents. And so if I'm in my lane, you're in your lane, you're in your lane, we can all make this thing happen and do it at the highest level. And I think that's why anything's possible for the individual chasing it.
I love that. And I love that saying, we're all ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
100%. 100%. And that's the beauty of life. But you got to go. You can't be passive about it. You actually got to go.
You got to go make it happen.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was such an incredible 1 hour with you, and we love having you in our world, and we love being in your community, and hopefully you'll be back on the show very soon.
For sure. And you're doing meaningful work. So continue doing meaningful work, continue being phenomenal human beings. Hopefully the world opens up. I'm going to get vaccinated so I can fly again.
Can't wait to hang out with you.
I look forward to it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.